My father called 5 times demanding I attend Khloe's wedding. When I arrived, her fiancé boasted about his crypto success. But my research revealed, "You've always been jealous of your sister's happiness." It was about to cost them everything. I stood up with proof. The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. My mother's accusation cut deeper than I expected, but not because it hurt, because it revealed how blind they truly were. Here I was, trying to save them from financial ruin, and they saw jealousy. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't about to destroy everything they owned. I felt something shift inside me, a cold clarity I recognized from high-stakes data analysis at work. This wasn't about family dynamics anymore. This was about preventing a calculated predator from executing a perfect con, and my family was choosing to be willing victims. Fine. If they wanted to dismiss me as the jealous sister, I'd show them exactly what their jealous daughter was capable of. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I'd compiled during my sleepless night at the coffee shop. Screenshots, financial records, even a police report from Tampa where Elliot had pulled this exact scheme 8 months ago. But as I looked at their faces, Dad's dismissive scowl, Mom's theatrical sighs, Khloe's tears, and Elliot's practiced concern, I realized something crucial. They didn't want to be saved. They wanted their fairy tale, so I'd give them a choice they couldn't ignore. What they didn't know was that their computer genius sister in Chicago wasn't just a product analyst. I was a senior forensic data specialist at Blake & Associates, one of the top financial investigation firms in the Midwest. My job was literally tracking down sophisticated financial fraud. I spent my days unraveling crypto schemes, shell companies, and investment cons for clients who'd lost millions. The skills that made me valuable to Fortune 500 companies were about to save my family's house. Over the past 3 years, I'd built a network of contacts that would make most private investigators jealous. Former FBI agents now working private security, crypto specialists who could trace blockchain transactions across 17 countries, legal experts who'd testified in federal fraud cases. When you work in financial forensics, you collect allies the way other people collect business cards. My annual salary was $127,000, with performance bonuses that had pushed me over $150,000 last year. I owned my Chicago condo outright, drove a paid-off Honda, and had $80,000 in savings specifically because I'd learned to live below my means. Growing up invisible had taught me to be financially independent. I never wanted to need anything from people who couldn't see my worth. But more importantly, I had access to financial databases and investigation tools that cost thousands per month. LexisNexis, corporate registry searches, advanced background screening platforms. What took law enforcement weeks to piece together, I could compile in an afternoon, and I'd already started. The moment I'd shaken Elliot's hand and felt that overly firm grip, my professional instincts had activated. His story about decentralized AI trading platforms was textbook crypto fraud terminology. Partners in Dubai meant untraceable offshore accounts. Private networks nobody could verify meant no legitimate business registration anywhere. I'd already run his face through image recognition software against financial crime databases. The matches were damning. 3 different identities, 4 different states, but always the same pattern. Charm offensive, whirlwind romance, investment opportunity, vanishing act 3 days before the wedding. These weren't random coincidences. This was a refined system. What's more, I'd found his real name, Eric Lawson, 34, with an extensive criminal history spanning from identity theft to securities fraud, currently wanted in 2 states. The man about to marry my sister wasn't just a con artist. He was a fugitive. The next morning, while my family bustled around with wedding preparations, I drove to the county courthouse and pulled the property records on our family home. The second mortgage Dad had signed was worse than I'd feared. $85,000 borrowed against a house worth maybe $120,000. Combined with their existing mortgage, they were leveraged to the breaking point. If Elliot disappeared with that money, which he would, they'd lose everything within 6 months. I called my colleague David Foster, who specialized in emergency asset protection. "I need a crash course in stopping financial fraud in progress," I told him. "Family situation. Guys planning to disappear with everything." "How long do you have?" David asked. "Wedding's tomorrow. He'll vanish Sunday morning based on his pattern." "That's tight but workable. You need to create immediate financial consequences that scare him off before he executes. Make the risk higher than the reward." David walked me through the strategy. Document everything. Create a paper trail that would follow Elliot to his next identity. Make it clear that taking their money would bring federal attention he couldn't afford. Most importantly, cut off his escape routes by exposing his real identity to local law enforcement. By noon, I had a comprehensive dossier that would have impressed my most demanding clients. Bank routing information from his previous cons, photos from 3 different driver's licenses, even his mother's address in Ohio, where he'd briefly used his real name on a utility bill. This wasn't just evidence of fraud. This was a complete roadmap of Eric Lawson's entire criminal operation. But the most powerful weapon I had wasn't in any database. It was the fact that I understood exactly how his psychology worked. Con artists rely on their victims being isolated, embarrassed, and resistant to outside help. They depend on family dynamics that prevent clear thinking. What they don't expect is a Mark sister who gets paid 6 figures to dismantle financial fraud for a living. I had one more call to make. Detective Lisa Hayes with the Cook County Financial Crimes Unit had worked several cases with our firm. When I explained the situation, her response was immediate. "If he's using fake identities across state lines, this is federal. FBI will want this. But you need to make sure he doesn't just disappear when he realizes you're onto him." "What do you mean?" "Guys like this have exit strategies. Multiple identities, cash reserves, probably a car registered under a false name, parked somewhere your family doesn't know about. If you spook him too early, he vanishes, and your family never gets their money back. You need to trap him in a scenario where running makes things worse for him than staying." That's when the perfect strategy crystallized. I wouldn't just expose Elliot. I'd corner him so completely that his only option would be returning the money and disappearing quietly. And I'd do it in front of my entire family so they could see exactly who their jealous daughter really was. The wedding rehearsal dinner was held at the Riverside Inn, the fanciest restaurant our small town had to offer. Extended family filled 3 long tables. Everyone focused on Khloe in her flowing rehearsal dress. I sat at the far end, largely ignored as usual, watching Elliot work the crowd like a professional. He told my uncle about cryptocurrency investments returning 40% annually. He explained to my aunt how artificial intelligence was revolutionizing trading. Every word was carefully calibrated to sound impressive to people who didn't understand finance. Classic predatory behavior. During dessert, I stood up and tapped my wine glass. The room fell silent. "I'd like to make a toast," I began, pulling out my phone, "to Elliot Brady, or should I say Eric Lawson, or perhaps you prefer Ethan Lewis from the Tampa incident last year." The color drained from his face instantly. Khloe looked confused. Dad started to object, but I continued. "You see, everyone, my job in Chicago is investigating financial fraud, and Eric here is quite accomplished. 4 different identities, 7 different victims, over $300,000 stolen from families just like ours." I swiped to display his mugshot on my phone screen. This photo was taken in Florida 8 months ago. The room erupted. Khloe screamed. Mom gasped. Dad lunged toward me, but I held up my hand. "Here's what's going to happen, Eric. You're going to quietly return every penny you've taken from my family. You're going to disappear tonight. And if you ever contact any of us again, the FBI will receive this complete file documenting your entire operation, including the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands where you've been hiding your previous victims' money. Elliot's practiced charm cracked completely. You can't prove any of this, he stammered. I smiled coldly. I can prove all of it. Bank records, facial recognition matches, even the rental car you have parked 3 blocks away under the name Edward Blake. Did you know that identity is flagged in 17 states? Very sloppy operational security, Eric. The silence was deafening. Then Elliot stood, his hands shaking. This is insane. You people are insane. He looked at Khloe desperately. Baby, you know who I am. Don't let her destroy what we have. But Khloe was staring at the mug shot on my phone screen. The face was unmistakable. Get out, she whispered. Just get out. Within 24 hours, our family's bank account showed an electronic deposit of $85,000. Eric Lawson had vanished completely, leaving behind only his rented tuxedo and a 3-paragraph confession email admitting to identity fraud. Dad apologized for dismissing my warnings. Mom finally acknowledged my professional success. Khloe thanked me for saving her from a devastating mistake. The wedding was canceled, but our family was finally intact.